In yoga terms, we often speak of our own experience of life being sort of a virtual reality. It's been established based on our conditioning, on our genetics, and even on past lives, if that sort of thing appeals to you. Today, we're going to have a discussion about what comes up in practice, some of the typical things that can occur and how to deal with them. And they will follow that up with a practice on acceptance. Hi, I'm Steve from Steve White Yoga, bringing you the application of yoga to manage your health, improve your relationships, and balance your life. Let's take a look at today's session. All right. Well, welcome to you all. I'm glad that you were able to make it, or if not make it, at least to see this in the recorded version. I am Steve. I'm a yoga teacher at Yoga One Studio, and we're doing a little meditation thing on Tuesdays and Thursdays called Mindfulness. So let's talk for a few minutes and then we'll do a practice. I will bring up something to share with you. All right. So the topic this week is in dealing with what comes up during a practice. I think there's a tendency, particularly with newer meditators, to believe that when you are doing this and it doesn't work out just the way you thought that it would or should, that you're doing something wrong. And I think we all have to recognize that life is life, and being on a cushion doesn't relieve you of that. And so what we're trying to do here is to simply promote the idea that dealing with distraction is as much a part of the meditation process as anything else. So here are a couple of things. Let's give a definition of mindfulness first. This is one of many. Setting aside a time and a space to cultivate the skill of being in the moment and observing what happens. So there's one definition for you. So it doesn't take long. It takes an intention, takes a few minutes a day, and a commitment to do it on a regular basis. And if you're willing to do all that, then the magic will happen. So here are some categories of distraction that I just sort of made up, but they're representative, I think, of a lot of the things that constitute experiences that most meditators have. And the first category is environmental. So this would be things like, I use the weather because the weather just sometimes distracts me. I have a space where I can look out my window while I'm doing my practice. And sometimes if it's really windy, or if I see somebody walk by with a thick coat on, I'll be like, oh, I wonder what the weather is right now. And so then I'll grab my phone from wherever it is that's not right next to me, but close enough, and turn on the weather app to see what's going on outside. Being in a foreign location, and by foreign, I don't mean necessarily another country, but just in a place where you don't typically practice, sometimes can serve as a distraction. And then disruptions that occur in the environment just, as a result of things going on around you. So for instance, about this time of day, usually on Tuesdays, the neighbor is rolling the garbage cans down the driveway just as I'm doing this. It hasn't happened yet today, which leads me to believe that it might. But in any event, the idea of there being things that are going on around in the world, maybe it's a helicopter flying over, maybe it's hail pelting on the window. These are environmental conditions that are just part of the gig. A second category is situational. And this might refer to things, it could just be a hectic time. You could have had a bad day or a bad week or a bad month and a lot going on, and you can't keep up, and the list never gets done. And that certainly can serve as a distraction to getting on the mat, and once there, to staying there. Um, and for some people, it might be you've just hung up with your sister and you had a fight, or you're anticipating a phone call later on that you think might either be good news or bad news. So those kinds of situational things that occur that may influence or impact your ability to sit and to be still. Emotional is the next category, and it kind of covers the gamut. I mean, everything in some way or another, I suppose, involves emotions when we're talking about distraction. But with particular regard to a lot of the things that are happening now in the world, anxiety, stress, depression, boredom, fear, panic, withdrawal, these are all things that can come up and, again, be a distraction to a practice. And then the final category almost everybody goes through multiple times is motivational. So sometimes you just don't feel like it, or you're too tired, or you're just sort of worn out and spacey and not sure that you can accomplish anything on the mat. And I put accomplish in air quotes. So, too distracted by other things that are going on in life. So we all deal with these motivational issues, at least from time to time. Some people deal with them every day. Sometimes you can be completely motivated to do this or anything in life, a diet or an exercise program or whatever, for the first month or the first 6 months, and then it kind of falls off. So motivational issues are inherent in practice, as with everything else. So I'm just going to go back and mention some habits that we talked about last week, actually, and just reiterate a couple of things real quickly. One is that it's good to have a space. So surroundings can be important. A place that's safe, a place that's comfortable, a place that has some sense of serenity, perhaps, and confined if you have other bodies in the house, pets, children, spouses, or others. And they say in the tradition, it should be a sacred space. So someplace that's specific and that you can call your own, at least for the period of time that you do your practice, even if you have to put it away in a closet after you're done. In my case, I use a little altar as part of my practice space, and it has some things on it that are meaningful to me. If that's part of a tradition that you come from, or it's appealing to you, then that's definitely encouraged as well. So surroundings are important. Consistency is the next thing, and time of day is certainly a consideration. I think just about every tradition suggests that a practice should be done early in the morning, kind of first thing. If that works in your life, it's not, it doesn't make or break it, but it's certainly easier for a lot of people to sort of get focused without a lot of distractions if they do it early. 7 days a week is great. 5 days a week is acceptable. 3 days a week is bordering on, it's helping a little, but it's not going to do make major differences in your life. And once is better than not at all, but not much better. So the goal is 7 days a week. And if because of schedule or just things that come up in life, if it turns out to be only 5 days, then you're doing pretty well at 5 days. So, and then we always suggest, especially in the early going, to use a timer. And this is saves us from looking at a clock constantly, or the temptation to look at a clock. I always suggest putting it somewhere behind you. So you set it, you sit down, you start to meditate. If it's behind you, it hopefully relieves the temptation to turn around and grab it and see how much time is left. And then the last thing that can be very helpful is a notebook or a journal. And things come up. Sometimes they're brilliant, little pieces of brilliance that might just appear out of nowhere. You might solve a problem. You might think of something that you forgot to do that you have to remember to do as soon as you get up off the cushion. And you might just have some experience that's worth recording. So, notebook or journal is definitely something that I'd suggest. From Julia Child, the queen of modern meditation, if you drop the lamb, just pick it up. Who will know? So, your practice isn't being evaluated by anybody else, it's just yours. And it's not a big deal if you have a bad practice, if you spend half or three quarters or most of your practice with your mind wandering sometimes. It's not the intention that that occurs, but sometimes it's the reality. And so accepting that, what is what is, and moving on from there is a lot better than chastising yourself or condemning yourself or deciding that somehow you're a delinquent when it comes to practice. All right, all of that said, let's do a practice. So I would ask you, as always, to settle in and to begin to come into contact with the space. So physical body first. Relax into the space, relax into a sense of presence. And then begin to collect your attention into your anchor. And you may recall the three anchors we've been using are breath, sensation, or sound. So whichever you choose, start to harness some awareness of your anchor. And begin to invite a relaxed attentiveness. Settle into your body. The body is where acceptance begins. So begin accepting your body. Accept that body is here in this moment, on this planet, at this time. So accept the life that we have right here, right now. So everybody is met with multiple things in life that are difficult to accept. From a perspective, it becomes a matter of what's convenient versus what's real. And sometimes reality isn't convenient. And that experience may differ from person to person through experiences, through hardships, through advantages. But no one escapes the challenge. No one fails to face many difficulties throughout their life. And so our opportunity in yoga is to begin to transform the process, or to begin the process of transforming, rather. Transforming ourselves from the inside out, to trace our response to external circumstances back to their origins, back to the source. A source that can only be touched in focused calm, in an environment of curiosity and acceptance, an environment like mindfulness provides. Now, allow some situation to come to the forefront which you may have trouble accepting. It might be something acute or immediate. It might be something chronic or long term. Not something traumatic, because trauma really needs to be dealt with separately and individually. But an issue where you have trouble accepting, and whatever comes up, Whatever comes up naturally, whatever arises, that works. So, with something in mind, recognize that there's a wall of resistance between the way that things are and the way that we want them to be. An unconscious gap we have created where reality is overtaken by our own preconceived patterns. Yoga, in fact, suggests that the two most common motivations for resistance are desire and aversion, wanting something or avoiding something. This creates a gap between the way things actually turn out and the way that we wish them to turn out. This wall of resistance is real only if we allow it to go unattended. So we're going through a process now to begin to allow the wall to melt or crumble or sink, whatever image works for you. So as you consider your response to this issue, maybe you feel it manifest in your body physically. Maybe you find tension in your shoulders or your jaw or your throat, perhaps in the muscles of your face, maybe your hands or your feet. And if nothing else, perhaps in your heart or in your head. So feel that resistance, feel that wall. And then as you inhale, would you take the energy of the breath into that resistance? Allow it to rest right at the base of that wall. And as you exhale, allow the energy of resistance to accompany the breath out of the body. And do this a couple of times. So inhale, meet the resistance. Exhale, send some of it out into the ether. And then release that effort for the moment. And now bring your awareness into direct contact with the reality, whatever it is that in this issue that lies beyond the resistance. What is real? What is the truth? Find that truth and rest for a moment with it. Even if you have resistance, if you don't want to accept it, allow it to sort of settle in as the ground. The ground over which we have these swirls of resistance, this wind. The reality is there. The resistance can change. Acceptance is an awareness of reality. We begin to accept as we begin to drop the resistance, the judgment, the analysis, and just rest in the presence of truth. The truth is there whether we avoid it or not. Ignoring it won't change it. Avoiding it won't change it. Getting angry or frustrated or blaming someone or something. None of those responses will change it. Acceptance is the only real opportunity we have to unwind it. So continue to observe and acknowledge whatever reactivity comes to rise around this issue, but be persistent about returning to the reality, sitting with the truth. Allow your desires, your wants, your needs to flow over and around it like the wind. Freedom comes with acceptance. Change comes with acceptance. And remember the mindfulness mantra: to be relaxed, to be friendly, to be interested. If you find strong resistance beginning to arise, return to your anchor and check in and say, this is the breath, this is real. Or this is sensation, this is real. Or this is sound, this is real. Again, direct some breath into the resistance directly in your heart, in your head, in any area of the body that you find tension. What we know is that acceptance relieves physical tension. Rejection creates tension. As we melt the barrier of resistance, our stature changes, our attitude changes, and our inner joy begins to sneak through. The famous psychologist Carl Rogers said, "It wasn't until I accepted myself as I am that I began to feel free to change." I will offer you a couple of resources here. So, if you want a tip for practice, it's embracing distractions rather. Make your distractions part of your practice. And then I think we talked about this last week too. Establish your space. So find a place that becomes yours for the period that you do your practice, and mark it out on in chalk if you have to. But find a place that you can feel is regular, comfortable, part of the consistency of doing this. If you want a book to read, there's one called Making Space, Creating a Home Meditation Practice with Thich Nhat Hanh, who is a very famous Vietnamese Buddhist monk, and he has written a plethora of books over the years since the 1970s, I think. And this one is probably 10 or 15 years old, but it's a good book. As far as mobile apps go, there's one called Breathe with 3 E's, 2 in the middle, 1 at the end. And Breathe is children friendly, I understand. It comes as a recommendation. I've not used it. As well as adult friendly. So, and I think you'd have to check the app, but I think from the age of 5 or 6. So if you have kids that you think could benefit from mindfulness, and the answer is they can, then this would be a good place to start. I hope you found value in today's video. For others like this, as well as many of the applications of yoga beyond the mat, please watch my YouTube channel, Steve White Yoga, or look at my website, www.stevewhiteyoga.com. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.